You're listening to the Living Adventures podcast, a lifestyle podcast hosted by Ashleymielke and Victoria Vance. Tune in for a new episode every Thursday to hear our honest conversations about topics like freedom, creativity, spirituality, luxury living, health and wellness, and above all else, building community.
We have real and unfiltered conversations inspired by our search to feel connected to people who give a shit about us, support our dreams, and understand our struggles. Our mission is to provide you with the tools, guidance, and motivation to navigate any moment in your life with the lens of your neurodivergent mind, with a community who gets you. Adventure on.
Hello!
Oh.
Welcome to the Living Adventures podcast with
Ashleymielke
and Victoria Vance.
This is clearly episode 1, and we will get so much better at this, but we would rather do it imperfectly than not do it at all. You know what I'm saying?
Because we're just going to learn and get better as we go on. Doesn't matter.
True. It's going to be so good. So we're going to kick off this podcast and every podcast with a theme of the week. And if you don't know who we are, because this is episode 1, I'm a certified life and business coach.
And I am a certified health and life coach specializing in working with people with ADHD.
And we have a lot of experiences throughout our weeks with our clients. And so every week we want to think about those experiences because odds are if our clients are dealing with it this week, you're also dealing with it this week. So Victoria, what is the theme that you've been noticing over this past week?
My clients have been really kind of coming into themselves, and a lot of them when they first start coming to me is like a really big turning point in their kind of looking at themselves and like changing themselves and working on that. And so this past week, a lot of them have been just like coming towards the end of when you first start out on working with yourself, of like the constant realizations that are hitting you day after day after day, and it feels like you can't get a break, is they're finally starting to like come to terms with those and like understand them and take a break from them, and they're like looking at them from afar and able to start like stepping back from themselves and like creating that barrier with themselves to then self-reflect on themselves. And they are loving being able to like have that experience and not being so deep into it and just the anxiety of constant realizations. And so it's a big thing.
That makes so much sense. Like, it's like when you first start a coaching experience, it's like, here's a fact about yourself, and here's a fact, and here's a way you should do things. And they're like, okay. And then now they're finally like, oh.
And it's like you got like 100 things at you going constantly, and you're like, and now this, and now I learned this, and now I learned this. And it's kind of stressful when you first start out. And so like, I've had like 6 clients this week that like, they're kind of like are hitting a week of like, okay, I understand everything that's been going on. And obviously like, they'll have many more of those realizations, but they're coming to a point where they can like step out of themselves and look at them in that whole different light and look at all of those realizations in a new way and like look at them together and decide what that means for them. And so it's a big turning point in their lives always. And so it's been really fun.
That makes so much sense. Even me with whenever you were like, fun fact, undiagnosed ADHD here. And whenever Victoria's like, you totally have ADHD. I was like, okay, maybe. And then it was like, new fact, new fact, new fact, new fact. And I was like, I'm learning a million things about myself. And then you like take a minute and you're like looking back on your whole life and you're like, okay, well, no, that now this all makes sense. And I can rock with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's a lot to learn, and it's kind of stressful in the beginning. And like, you kind of always have to go through it, I think. I don't think there's a way to fully avoid it, but it gets better. So if you're in it, it gets better.
Yeah, and I mean, the same thing is true even with business coaching, right? Like, it's realization after realization. I always say owning a business is like the greatest personal development journey you can go on, because in addition to learning how to run a business, you are learning how to run a business as yourself. There's a million different models out there. And I think one of the theme of the week for my clients, and something we've been focusing on heavily, is how do you want to do business and how do you decide that? You know, especially when you're entering new fields, whatever career it is, whatever job it is, you're going to go into it and not have any idea how things work. A lot of people don't know marketing, they don't know sales, they don't know those things. So how can they decide what tactics to use, what blueprint to use? And it's the same thing where they're overloaded with information and they're like, oh, I could do DMs, I could do Instagram, I could do TikTok. And they have to take a step back and be like, but what is it that's going to bring me joy? What's going to be easy for me? A lot of times I compare it to like a workout, like in anything, in how you manage your ADHD and how you run your business. If you don't like the tools you have and you don't like the way you're doing it, you're not going to do it. I don't like running. I'm never going to wake up every day and go on a run. It's not going to work out. I'm going to quit. And if you're running into resistance in your life or business that way, my clients have been realizing it's often because they're using tools or models that just don't fit their style.
Yeah. And it's also about like having the perseverance to keep at it when things are down and try new tactics, and like being able to step out and look at how you want to try it next time. And like, we can talk about this in future of like when I did one of your programs and whatever, and like I was like, I am not doing one of these things. I do not want to do it. I would rather quit my business and cry in a hole than ever do selling in the DMs. Like, I will not. And you were like, okay, then what are you going to do instead? And it's like having that mindset of being able to just like be like, okay, so if I don't like this, what am I going to do instead?
Totally. And I think that part is key. It's not just like, oh, these are things I hate and I hate them, but it's saying, okay, I hate them, but I'm going to look for an alternative way to get the same result, which is cool because like that's what coaching is about, or should be about. If you find a good coach, it's not, here's my roadmap, here's how I manage my ADHD, here's how I ran my business. No, it's what is your goal? And I'm going to accept whatever challenge you give me, right? Like if a client like you comes and they're like, I'm never selling in the DMs, I'm going to say challenge accepted. What are we going to do instead? But it's also, like you said, the what are we going to do instead that is key to success.
And I've never sold in the DMs, and I've been successful, so it can be done.
Yay! So yeah, you can do literally anything you want. Okay, that is it for theme of the week. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty of how the F did we start this podcast? Why are we here? What are you going to get out of this? All those fun things, just to get them out of the way, and then we can dive into like really juicy topics in other upcoming episodes. Although this could be a juicy topic, so let's find out if it will be.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of was.
Yeah. So I guess, where do we start? Victoria and I met at a dog park one day.
Yeah, we have dogs roughly the same age, and I was at a miserable point in my life. And I quit my 9-to-5 design job for my mental health, and I was a personal assistant and everything, and I hated it, and also was severely sleep deprived from puppyhood, and I had no idea how Ashley was surviving and running a business through puppyhood, but she also had another person to really help her
having a husband.
Finding that one. But we kind of just kept talking, and you were also going through stuff when we first met and everything, and it didn't start right away, but then kind of towards the spring after, you did help me start my business and everything. And so I did become a coach because of Ashley and everything. She originally told me to become a design consultant, and I was like, I would rather die, if I'm honest, than do that. If I'm leaving design.
And I said, challenge accepted.
Design full time. And you were like, well, just think about it or whatever. And I was like, okay. And then like 2 days later, I texted her and I was like, I think I want to do this. And then she was like, okay, so do it. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how that works. Okay. And I basically just did it.
Literally.
But we were kind of obviously still friends and everything during that whole process. And then kind of in the spring, we started to do a lot more because I got Ashley into walking the second the weather got nice.
Walking changed my life. I've literally had the best summer of my entire life because we started walking in the spring. Like, thinking about how summer's ending literally makes me want to cry. We literally started, she would just be like, we would end up walking at the same time because we have dogs, and we would just see each other, and we'd just be like, okay, well, do you just want to continue walking together? And then I found out Victoria walked like 7 miles a day. I'm like, that's insane. Catch me on this 1 mile walk. I'll see you. You do your walk, so I'll see you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then it just like kept adding up, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to walk 2 miles today. Well, I'm going to walk 3 miles today. And eventually now I walk like 5 miles a day. I'm addicted to walking, and we loved walking so much. We would just talk about so many things, and eventually we're like, we should go on hikes. Like, every weekend we should go somewhere exciting and explore and take the dogs. And so we started off like with really, really simple new walking places like Castle Island in Boston, which isn't really a hike. It's just a path to walk on. But then it was new. Yeah. And then eventually worked our way to all the way up to the White Mountains, hiking like 2,000 feet. That was a chaotic day, and we'll do a whole episode on problem solving in the White Mountains. A puppy almost passed, but he did it. He's happy. He's good. That was just minorly stressful. Stay tuned for that episode. But yeah, and then on our hikes, I think we just learned a lot. And then I think we also started sharing our takeaways from our hikes with our own audiences on TikTok and on Instagram. And people were like, hey, what do you guys talk about? What do you even talk about on those hikes, you know?
Yeah, and like I had so many people reaching out to me like, I wish I could go walking with you. I wish I could go hiking with you. And we kind of started, every single hike, we kind of came to the end of the hikes with always kind of talking and going down to like the same topic and everything. And a lot of it came down to like building community, and like we kept realizing like it comes down to our core values, which are very, very similar. Which is why we are great friends and everything. And we wanted to kind of create a space so that people could kind of hear some of these conversations and be in them and to get the benefit of them, because we both benefited from them so much in our own lives and business and everything, and just processed frustrations together and figured it out.
Problem solved.
We problem solved. Every single walk we're problem solving. In some type of way, no matter how small or big that problem is. And then we kind of just started to create this from that. And everyone kept asking me for a podcast, but I was too scared to do it alone, if I'm honest.
No, I know, me too. I'm like, it's kind of boring to do it alone. And that is like one of the things. And I know our walk conversations, like Victoria said, always come back to community. And I think for a long time, at least on the business perspective, I thought I had to do business alone, and it can very much feel that way. I'm sure it can even feel that way, you know, when you're learning to manage your ADHD. It can feel like you're alone. Even as, you know, a woman in her 20s, I feel like I'm doing things alone. I moved to a city. I had my husband, but really I didn't have any friends. I was pretty alone before I even got my dog. And so there's so much of our life that we do alone, and on our walks, it's like, oh, like you don't have to do anything alone. You actually need a community to thrive. And I think the struggle that we both faced is, it's like, where is that community? Who's creating it? And are we bold enough to say, okay, let's go create it, because we haven't found what we're looking for?
Yeah, and like I also think that kind of came in from where we were living, because we lived on the same, like the apartment complex is almost like dorms in a way. Obviously it's apartments, but we lived on the same floor and everything, and we knew everyone close to us. There's so many of the like buildings near us that we kind of created a community, and though that community may not have lasted and everything, but we did, and there's a reason for that and everything. But realizing that like it doesn't have to end, let's say at college, and we can create that in like new different ways and create aspects that we liked and enjoyed from that, and finding that in our everyday life, but also knowing like I think there's a self-discovery journal, like there is part of it where you have to do alone and you have to do by yourself so that you can get there and find those values for yourself and find out like what you do and don't like. And I have a bunch of clients going through that right now and can talk about that in a later episode, but you don't have to do it alone. And there is a part that we do, but then it's noticing and finding out how to ask and what you need after that part to rebuild that community. And I think that's kind of where we came in.
Yes, I love that. Oh, my brain loves systems. So hearing you be like, first, step one, figure out who the F you are. What do you value? Be alone. And I'm like, yes. And that's been true in both my friendships and relationships. I was single for 3 years after my longest relationship before I found my husband. But those 3 years, I was like, who is Ashley? And same thing, like I graduated college. I lost a lot of friends. And then for like a big chunk of time, it's like, who is Ashley? Part 2. And then you're right. It's like, okay, step 1, who the F are you? Part 2, who can integrate and mesh with who you are? Who has those same values? Which is why I think Victoria and I get along so well, is because we had that time to be like, we know who we are. We know what we value. Oh, cool. It's so easy to talk to each other because we value the same things. And everyone listening to this podcast right now, even if you just tuned in for the first time, I bet if you were attracted to the name of this podcast, the description, you have the same values that we have, and we are going to get along so well. And if you haven't had places in your life to tune into conversations like the ones that we're going to have around your values, this is going to start to shift perspectives for you, so you can start to find and lock into those new communities that you need.
Yeah. And I think it also, something I was thinking about the other day is like, we need to have a friendship work of any level. You need to have shared values, but like, it can be just one, and it can start out as just one, and then you can find more that you have together. But even like some friend that you have, like, not every person needs to have every single one that you have. You just need a slight bit in common to at least start, or just maintain like a good friendship. Not everybody needs to be your best and most acquaintance alliance that you're with, tied at the hip 24/7. And that's okay. And finding out that journey and like letting go of that past self and the past people you used to be with is so hard and not talked about. And it's kind of terrifying, because you are letting go of yourself to find your new self. And that break period of where like you don't have anybody but yourself, like, it can be terrifying, but it's worth it, I think.
I know. Yeah. Wait. Yeah. No one talks about how you can have gaps in friendships, and that it's like you are alone. I experienced that whenever I moved from Miami to Boston, where I was like, I don't have any friends right now. Like, yeah, I have my sister, who is literally my best friend. I have people from college who maybe I talk to once a month, but I'm like, I think I'm in this alone right now. And that is scary. And no one talks about that. Everyone just pretends like it's all hunky-dory and life is happy. And it's like, wait, no. We need friends, but it's okay if you don't have any right now, as you're discovering what a good friend would be to you. And like Victoria said, different friends can be good for you in different ways. Like, you know, you like, and I even think about that with like my husband, who is also my best friend. Adrian is not my everything in the way that I'm going to go hiking with Adrian. Adrian will never go hiking with me. He hates that. No. But it's good that I met Victoria, because that releases my need for adventure and creativity and being active and all those other values that I have. So it's really cool. Yeah.
And I think like, at least with ADHD, is we get stuck on finding one person to fulfill all those needs. And during that journey, you can take a step with yourself and say, like, I need to fulfill these things for myself. This is what I want. And that kind of is like a beginning of defining those values. And it's terrifying, and it's okay. You don't have to be, you are going to be alone a little bit, but like, take that time to find those people. And we can talk about that in another episode of like finding
how to make friends as
your people, because like we've talked about that a lot. And as I am working on kind of moving and doing something that terrifies me and excites me right now, is I sat myself down last night and I was like, why am I scared? And I'm like, because I'm scared to be that alone in a whole new place all by myself, but also like, I need that in a new way.
Yes.
And so that's okay. And like, I used to be so scared to be alone and everything, which is very common with ADHD because the racing thoughts and shame spirals and everything. And I was like, I had to like release that old fear again in a new way. And so that's okay if it keeps coming up in different ways and just tackling it in a new way.
Totally. Yeah. I think honestly what you're doing is going to be awesome. Like moving somewhere alone. Moving to Miami by myself, not knowing a single person, was the best thing I ever did for myself. Like, that started my journey to discover who I was, and there was a lot to navigate. And I was in college, so it was a little bit different because finding friends was easier, but so good. So I guess like what this podcast is like your connection point in transition almost. You know, it's like for all parts, like you could have already found your community and vibe with this, but I think a lot of who we're speaking to is where we were alone. We didn't really know who had the same values as us. We didn't really know how to go about finding them. And I think I was missing out on a lot of important conversations that I wanted to have before we started hiking. Like the topics that we talk about, like I was missing those. So odds are if someone listening to this right now, you're missing those conversations too. And so we're bringing them to you because it's a necessity to discover who you are, to stay true to who you are, and find out who can connect with you on those deeper levels.
And it's okay if it takes time, and like listen in if you keep enjoying that and you're in that space, because it took time for me to realize like that's what I really needed. And obviously Ashley did as well. And so that's why we're here now. And it kind of just worked out like that. And it really transformed me in my business, in my personal life, and to build that confidence, to be able to take that step for myself and be more confident with it and know that, you know, it's okay if it doesn't work out to what my brain might currently think it might be, that whatever happens, you know, like, you'll find out on this journey and I'll find out as well, and can problem solve as we go, because we freaking hiked the White Mountains with very little preparation and crushed it. And so if I can do that, I can move anywhere I want, somehow make at least one friend, and survive.
All you need. One friend is all you need to start, guys. All you need. But yeah, no, it's so true. And that's what you'll learn in this podcast too, is like, you can do whatever you want. It might not work out how you want. And I'm sure you'll see lots of things go wrong for us along the episodes, along our mission to make it to episode 21, because that means we've made it as a podcast. That's our goal. And obviously there'll be more than 21, but but yeah, there'll be failures, and that's okay. And we'll share our struggles with you, so you can know you're not alone. Because I think that's the message of this episode: is you're not alone. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone is struggling, but if we can support each other and connect with each other, we can struggle a little bit less.
I also, like, we can also deep dive on the word failure in a future episode, because it's like, what does it mean? Like, we all are so, like, a failure is so heavy and it's so hard and whatever, and it's just like, okay, I failed, whatever. What does that mean? That doesn't mean everything. And it's picking yourself up from that again and figuring out a new way and building that confidence in yourself, and that willingness to do that takes time and everything. And that's a big part of what we do as our jobs for our clients, and helping them do that and having to do that for ourselves. Yeah.
It's kind of especially if you have a business, but really in anything in life, it's like, are you resilient enough to just say, well, can't give up, gotta keep going? You know, like, your whole business can fall apart, and you have to decide, like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And at least for me, it's always like, do I care about the life I want to create for myself more than this quote unquote failure? Like, is my dream life important enough to get up even if I've been knocked down? Because if you think that way, then there is no failure. That's what I tell my clients. So, like, if you keep going, you can't fail, because you've just decided to keep going. You can, like, run into little battles, but the war is not over till we're on top, baby. And so
winter's always coming.
Winter is coming, but I will not quit until I have won the war, you know? We're going to keep going. We're going to keep growing. And yeah, that's the mindset.
And I think my last thing will be, like, I always thought when I was working on myself that, like, I was digesting so much information to, like, learn and not make the same mistakes as others. And I think there is something you need to let go in that. And I definitely needed to, and, like, be okay with making those mistakes. And there are some things that you might have been told, but you just have to learn for yourself. And there's a great example in my own life of stabbing myself in the leg, which Ashley knows that story. And I just had to learn that for myself, even after building a knife, like, do not keep the blade going towards me. Guess what? I learned the price the hard way, but I know that story now. And there are some things that you need a lived experience to learn, and there's some things that you don't. And
oh my God,
you just have to find that out along the way.
Yes. I have a woman who does Reiki for me, and she was talking about soul contracts and all those things. And she's like, Ashley, I hate to tell you this, but you have the mastery contract. You're not on the life of, like, let's just go and thrive and just be luxurious. No. My internal being wants to learn how things work, which means I have to learn a lot of times the hard way, right? Like, there's been so many times in my business where someone is like, just do steps 1 through 4. And I'm like, but I want to know how step 1 works. I want to know all the details of step 1. I don't want to just get there. I want to know how to get there, right? And I think sometimes that feels like a downfall if you're that way, where you're like, but I want to do it all the way out. I don't want to just be given that shortcut. Even though I internally really would love the shortcut, my brain is like, we have to learn every single step. And if that's your process, that's okay. Because you'll learn things the hard way, but you'll learn them for life. Just like Victoria will probably never stab herself again.
Yeah, definitely not. But like, there are some times that you can learn from each other and everything. I've learned from you and your business. You've learned things from me already. And the more you talk and have those conversations, the more you can learn. And there's some mistakes that I will not make because you have made them. But there are some mistakes that I still have to go and learn. And that's okay.
That's so true. Yeah. So other things you can get out of this podcast. Learn from our mistakes. But if you make them, just let us know when you make them like us, and we can all bond in the shared experience of messing things up, because there are so many things I have messed up. Oh my gosh. But it's fine. You learn the hard way. Anyways, we could do a whole episode on things I've learned the hard way. That'll come soon too.
Yeah, things I learned. When you need to get stitches.
Oh my gosh.
I never knew. I know that really sounds dumb, but like I didn't know if I was overreacting. I wasn't. I was underreacting. But it's fine. Geez. We're living and we're learning.
Photos coming in the show notes. If you're squeamish, don't look. No, I'm just
kidding. Won't put them because they're bad. And yeah, that's, I guess, the start of this. And then we have built this now. This is where we are today.
Yeah. Living adventures. The adventure continues. Thank you for listening to episode numero uno.
No.
And this is your homework. 1, if you've taken a lot of information in recently, like Victoria's clients this week, take a step back. Look at it all. Digest it a little. I don't even remember what the theme was of the week for my clients, but that's okay. What did I say?
Figuring out how, like, running their business for themselves.
Homework number 2, think about yourself. What do you like to do? Start to implement the things you actually like, and if you're running into resistance, take a step back. I think the actual homework assignment is whatever you're doing, take a step back today. That's your homework.
Definitely.
And then make sure you like this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, give us a 5-star review, let us know what you liked, and look at the show notes. Follow us on socials, because we're way more active on whatever other platform is not this podcast. This once a week. Everywhere else, daily. You can get daily access to us. And we'll see you for episode number 2. Anything else, Victoria?
No, I think that's it for this one.
Bye. Living Adventures. Signing off.